When considering other towns in the UK, the town of Haywards Heath is pretty modern by standard. It was one of the many new towns to spring up from the railway construction, but Haywards Heath was one of the few towns that its birth was almost certain, because this town back in the 1840s had a very big job to do. The building of the Brighton line from London started as early as 1834. It was a vital road for both freight and people, and the town of Brighton had been famous for decades for fish and being a health resort for the wealthy. The construction of the route was staggered, with the first section built between London Bridge and Croydon, terminating at Spa Road. From there, people would take the road to the coast, riding for hours at a time. Of course, when technology was available, work began planning the new line. Several plans were put on the table, but in the end, Sir John Reddy's direct route won. Like his father and his brother, his life would evolve around engineering. He would be responsible for overseeing of his father's plans for the new London Bridge. This was the same bridge that was moved and rebuilt in Arizona. Getting back to the Brighton line, a new company was formed called the London and Brighton Railway Company. The engineer responsible for building this line was John Rastrick. Having been given the route, I can only imagine his face. The line was direct, but getting there was not going to be easy. There were hills, there were gradients, and then there was Haywards Heath, a large valley thanks to the river Ouse that there would be no going around. They had to cross it. The only solution in Rastrick's eyes was a viaduct. At 37 arches and 450 metres across, it would be one of the longest railway viaducts in the country. As this was going to be a massive project, he worked with engineer and architect David McCatter. David had an impressive resume, having been responsible for a host of buildings in Ramsgate. He was perfect for the job. Considering the territory and the geology, rather than using local stone, for stability and longevity, it was decided to utilise red brick. They contacted clayworks in both the UK and overseas with a view to making over 11 million bricks. The majority was just your standard, similar to what your home bricks were made of, but some were commissioned to make specialist bricks custom for the job. These would come in useful later. As well as this, carved stone was also used. This was coming from Normandy. This begs the question, why not use the stone from the UK? Even by barge, the stone needed in the quantity required would take weeks, even months to quarry, shape and then bring. And it wasn't for the lack of canals. The area had several. However, it was quicker to get the materials overseas and over the channel than by barge via the Cuckfield Canal extension and the Ouse. So they had the bricks, but what about the glue? The glue came in form of lime mortar. The primary ingredient, quicklime, was mixed with sand and water to create a paste that, when hardened, creates a strong bond between the bricks. The mortar also has some flexibility, particularly important as the structure will settle under its own weight. But it came at a cost, and it was borne by the workers. Quicklime is a very strong alkaline by nature and as strong as sulfuric acid when it comes into contact with skin. It also has a tendency to cause extreme heat when in contact with water. After the reaction is finished, only then does it stabilise. If the heat and the resulting gases are not allowed to dissipate, let's say trapped under pre-mixed water, then the sudden change can cause explosions. Undermixing was deadly, with many men suffering burns as a result. The quicklime was also in powder format and was so fine it was sometimes ingested either by inhaling or through the skin to food contact. This straight away caused burns and scarring to the lungs and the esophagus. It would be phased out in favour of concrete, but it didn't stop thousands of workers getting ill or passing as a result. Construction began in 1839 and the foundations were cut to fanfare, but unlike other viaducts, the pillars were pierced by a very large hole in the centre. This would provide a twofold benefit. 1, that the load would be spread more evenly over the foundations, and 2, it's cheaper than filling it in. At a cost of £38,000, budget was everything. Still, the structure took 3 years to build. When the viaduct was complete, it was not only a structural success, but a visually stunning one too. The hole in the pillars followed the natural curve of the valley, creating a marvel in its own right. All but one was amused by the idea. Queen Victoria distrusted the bridge and was not impressed with the missing centres. She demanded that when she travelled to Brighton, she would alight at Balacombe, take the road to Haywards Heath and re-enter the royal train at the station. Although the driver and fireman would have been proud to take such an important person, I can only imagine they would have been less than impressed with this arrangement. As there were other trains the Queen was blocking up, but hey, she was the Queen. It will be a further 20 years before the line was completed to the original plan, and for a time passengers enjoyed the view from the safety and the comfort of the carriages. But the multitude of trains began to take its toll. In the 1890s they were concerned over its structural integrity, so sections were removed and replaced. Luckily those working on the viaduct had the foresight to use red brick, similar to the ones in its construction. The only thing they couldn't match correctly was the colour, as even red brick will discolour when exposed to the elements. The viaduct with its improvements continued its job fairly uninterrupted. That was until the late 1940s. British Rail had just inherited the network that was so pockmarked, old and failing from the scars of war. They had a lot to deal with, but they also knew that the viaduct's life expectancy was coming fast. Raster had predicted about a 160-year-old lifespan for the old girl, and this left British Rail in a quandary. Do they knock it down and build a new concrete one, or do they restore what's there? Unfortunately, the rest of the railway would take priority, and by 1956, the decay on the viaduct was so extensive that British Rail couldn't afford the restoration. But it was these lack of funds that might have also saved it. British Rail couldn't afford to restore it, but they couldn't afford a new bridge either, with a collective sigh of relief from the architects that witnessed the travesty at Euston. So the bridge was monitored but left to its own devices. This gave time for English Heritage to step in and declare the structure a Grade 2 listed building in 1983. No matter what now, the viaduct was safe. It was in a state, but it was safe. When Railtrack took over the infrastructure works after the railways were privatised, all eyes turned to the viaduct. It was in a sorry state. The limestone pavilions were in disrepair and were so bad that props had to be put in as emergency measure just to hold the roofs up. Bricks had come out, the walls were crumbling and the lime water was starting to decay. In 1996, Railtrack, along with English Heritage, planned a £6.5 million makeover. The Town Council Heritage Trust contacted the French town of Bordeaux for harder-wearing limestone as it was the closest match. Bricks were handmade and the mortar was a mix of modern cement with the limestone traditional medium. It took 3 years to complete, but the work gave the viaduct another 20 or so years. That 20 or so years ended in the 2020s, and Network Rail revisited the viaduct. It was clear that a more thorough restoration was needed. Network Rail contacted Octavius Infrastructure to do the work. Parts of the viaduct were enveloped in scaffolding while workers inspected every arch, stone and parapet and replaced if needed. Each brick was again cast by hand with French limestone mortar to secure them. It has taken 2 years to restore the first 8 arches, and although there's no completion time frame, I would estimate the scaffolding to be around for at least the next decade. The scaffolding, though, is not failing to detract from another and frankly more unexpected form of attraction: tourism. The pillars have holes in them to save money, but their symmetry is an Instagrammer's dream. There are thousands of photos of people sitting in the pillars with the cascading holes behind them, arching up the valley in neat rows. With the spread of social media, it was natural to attract both photographers and vloggers, all wanting the perfect shot. The viaduct remains open while works continue, and all the while over 100 trains pass by daily, taking thousands of passengers. And when the work is done, it is hoped it'll be as good as new and exceeds Rastrick's expectations.